after that, I couldn't stop crying. Like 2 hours from LA, I just was like a fountain. Like the tears just kept coming. I'm making this video for people who are interested in going abroad and are worried about culture shock and wonder what it's like or what is one perspective of it, but also for myself because, like I've mentioned before, I'm going to Israel for a whole year. I'm really excited, but I don't know what it's going to be like. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to feel culture shock because we already know how that went last time. But I don't know what it's going to be like, whether it's going to be different. So I want to document my experience, so hopefully like in November I can make a new video and describe what it's like. So for starters, was I aware of culture shock before traveling? So I was 18, I had never traveled internationally by myself. I didn't know about culture shock in that word, but I would have categorized it as feeling homesick. So what goes into that? I thought, well, missing family, missing food, not fitting in. I thought that's what it was. And to an extent, it is part of it, but not all of it, of course. It can lead to depression and feeling physically ill. So what were my expectations of culture shock? Well, number one, I thought I would be immune to it. I didn't think it was going to affect me because I was like, that's for wimps. Like, I'm a pro. I thought, like, I've been to Mexico for vacations. Spanish is one of the languages that I speak, so I thought, I got this. You know, I was really, really naive. I thought, oh, it's going to be just like going to Mexico, like going to my own backyard. And it wasn't so, as I would later find out. Some of the differences that I encountered were just that, you know, it was like the first time for many firsts, like first time traveling abroad by myself, because I've been on a plane before, you know, I've gone to other countries, but this was going to be the first time living without my family, being responsible for my own person, and, you know, being the only daughter in my home, raised with a lot of guys, not just my brothers, but my friends. They tend to be a lot of guys, so, you know, I was gonna live in a dorm with just girls, like for the first time ever. I was moving from having my own room, the commodity of my privacy and all that, and going into a room, a large bedroom with 6 other girls. And that was interesting because, you know, you have to share your space. There's also, you can't just turn off the light when you want to unless it's like lights out. It was completely different. They were, especially in the young women that were from Latin countries, they're very touchy-feely, and I don't know about you, but if you're from the American culture, that's not really a thing here. We're not very like touchy-feely, I feel. At least my experience growing up, especially being raised with guys, you know. Yeah, and so it was like, oh, okay, well, it was just different. I'd grown up in a church where the sisters peck each other on the cheek, but I always thought like, okay, well, that's the adults do that, but like, even though I was 18 at that time, I never considered myself an adult, really. I felt still like a kid. Sometimes I still do. So that was something that I learned to do, I guess, to be a little more affectionate, at least with the girls. And I was also learning to get in tune with my more feminine side, and before I was just embarrassed to sing in front of people, especially when my voice started changing from that childish voice to a more higher pitch, wearing makeup, just being girly in general, because I feel like I used to kind of repress that side of me because I felt like, oh, the guys are gonna think like, you know, I'm a girl now, which obviously I am, but I don't know, like I was embarrassed of it and I thought that they would see me like an outsider, so I always kind of evaded that, which is really hard because my mom always wanted me to be super girly and everything, so that was kind of like a clash, like trying to please both, I don't know who. So that helped me to become more in tune, like I said, with my feminine side. So what were my run-ins with culture shock? There were, I don't know if you would categorize it as culture shock, but I had a few instances of panic on my first day. So like my arrival, okay, I forget one of my luggages at the airport, and all I had with me was like my bedding and things like that. So I was freaking out. I was like, what am I gonna do? Like all my clothes for classes in there, because we had to dress formally. I noticed that in Latin countries you usually dress formally for school. That's the thing there. not that bad though. But it was for me when I realized that luggage wasn't with me. I don't know why it didn't occur to me just go pick it up, and that's what I did. And then I get into the dorm. That's another thing, because then my dorm monitor, she greets me, she's like, oh, welcome. And then she tells me like, you can go ahead and hang that stuff on these cerchas, and those 2 gavetas are yours. And I'm like, cerchas, gavetas, like what's this? Like, is this Spanish? Like, I had never heard these words, even like in my Spanish classes in high school. I never heard of these words. So I was kind of completely thrown off, and I realized like, oh, I don't know everything. Like, I gotta learn these things, and I learned that there's different types of Spanish. Not just with that incident, but I soon came to realize that other Spanish-speaking students from other Latin countries in South America, Mexico, or even Spanish speakers that were from the U.S., they all spoke like a different vernacular, and so we all had to kind of pick up on it here and there. For example, one day I just wanted to ask someone for change, just, you know, like, you have a change for 10, like, so I don't remember how many quetzales I was asking for, but I mean, I was just like, ¿tienes cambio? And I was just like, what? And I'm like, feria, sueltos, and I don't remember anymore all the terms. I just know that there were at least 5 that I had to go through in order for her to understand me. So like these other run-ins, like with culture shock, I think were mainly like language, but it was very minor, okay? It wasn't like I was completely freaking out only that first day, because I was just like, whoa. But I was kind of like, okay, taking it in, and, you know, and just keep going on. Like, I never said anything. I just kind of try not to say anything too. You don't want to offend people. Just kind of observe it. Don't take anything personal, because like, for example, with a language, there's going to be terms, even if you speak the language, it might be different from the language that you grew up with or that you learned in your institution. So yeah, there was like words that patojo, patoja, like the way to call a young man or a young woman, and I was just like, what is that? Like, to my ear it sounded just vulgar. And then I realized like, oh, that's what they call young people here. So then later on I was all like, hey, patojo, chispudo, you know, I start picking up the language. And there were other words that, even though I know now, so mentally they're not bad, it's just part of the slang between friends and the way they talk to each other. I hate how, like, it just like on my ear. I don't like how it sounds, and I don't like to hear it. But like, if other people use it, I'm like, okay. But just my personal choice, I don't like to use those types of slangs. Another issue could be, I guess, the attitude or the character of people. Like, you had some people that were just so sweet. Like, I've never met people as a group that were generally so sweet like that. And then there were others that were just so harsh in the way they talk to each other, or the way they talk to you, they address you. And I was like, I don't even want to get close to that person. I'm scared I might say something. And so yeah, later on I just started noticing that's just their culture. They're like a little more rough in their speech. And but I tend to be a very sarcastic person. Not something I should be proud of, according to my mom. Once I kind of got like, okay, they're not serious, it's just like me. Like, I tended to find something that I could relate to with someone, and then kind of like, oh, I got you, you know, and just go with it. Say my worst experience with culture shock was the return. You know, I said goodbye to everyone, and it's kind of like, yeah, I'm going home, but it didn't really sink in at first. And then I also happened to ride back with a friend from the institution, but she lived in LA and I didn't. So when we start hugging each other goodbye, that's like when it starts sinking, like, this is over, like, I'm never going back. Like, it's true, because we had a theme song. We had like it's like, being an intern is, you can only live once, or something like that. And so I'm like, it's true, like, I'll never be able to have this experience again, and it's all over, and my life ends here. And just, you know, I was just really sad, just sunk in at the moment. And after that I couldn't stop crying. Like, 2 hours from LA, I just was like a fountain. Like, the tears just kept coming. And I came back home, and I just thought, like, how depressing, like, what a boring life I have lived all this time. And like, it went from living with your friends and just having fun, hanging out anytime you want, to just being like at home and not doing anything, because I wasn't working, I wasn't going to school. I didn't really know why. I didn't know what to do with my life. Just kind of sat in my room door closed, blinds closed, everything was just seemed making it even more depressing. So like I created like an unhealthy environment for myself, and eventually my mom just kind of, she noticed it, and I'm like, I thought I was hiding it really well with the door closed, you know, no one sees, no one knows, but she did. Another reason why it was probably harder when I returned was also because the people that stayed home that didn't go through the experience, it's like they didn't really want to hear about my experience. It was just like, yeah, you studied abroad, okay, like, yeah, it's cool, like, but if you keep talking about it, like, there's like these inside jokes that you share with friends there which they might not get. So yeah, I just gotta move on. And eventually I just kind of got over it. I started to get involved in certain things, and it distracted me. I stopped thinking about how great life was there and how it was better than over here, comparing it. Many people say like, don't compare the new culture to your own culture. Well, for me it was reverse. I kept comparing my experience abroad and how it was much better. So yeah, and that's a recommendation. Like if you study abroad and you really liked it, you feel the culture a shock when you come back home, just get involved with something that will distract you from what you're feeling, and you'll notice that when you give back to, you know, volunteering or something like that, it makes you feel better and you will forget slowly, you know, just keep the good memories.